Welcome to Data Explored 2. In this particular series of webinars, we explore hot trends in the data and AI space. And my name is Olesen Bagneux. I'm the host today. I have the pleasure of being the chief evangelist in Actian, a role that I'm very happy about. And one of my absolute favorite things to do is to host these webinar series that is 100% not about Actian, but about very important topics in the data and AI space and the tech space that we can all learn more about and should learn more about. Today I have three guests with me, a primary guest, if you will, and then two panelists that will expand our understanding of the topic at hand. The first guest is Bill Inmon. Bill Inmon is an American computer scientist and author of several very highly influential books on data architectures and technology. Is the inventor of the data warehouse, and he joins us in that capacity and as the inventor of the textual warehouse, which is the topic that we will be discussing here today. Also, we have two panelists that will shed some new perspectives on this topic. Shweta Shah, that is the chief data architect. Hi, Shweta. And the coiner of the content quality management idea, a term that is highly relevant for AI. Also with us is Jessica Talisman, an independent information architect with her own consultancy, and coiner of the ontology pipeline, which is likewise a term that is highly relevant to AI. And so what we will be discussing today is the textual warehouse that Bill has talked about in several books and in numerous presentations. And so I will set the stage a bit, and then I will enter into a conversation with you, Bill. So first of all, and before we dive in, I want to say to the audience that there's a Q&A box that you can use for questions. Please use that Q&A box. The format of the conversation is such that I will have around half an hour conversation with Bill, 5-10 minutes conversation with first Shweta and then Jessica, and then we open the floor for the questions that you may have in the audience. And so that's it, really. And with that, I want to set the stage a little bit with introducing the concept of this talk. So basically, Bill, you are known as the father of the data warehouse. You coined that term many decades ago, and it was very visionary of its time. It took long time before the data community adopted the term, understood what you meant. And and I will say very openly that I am a big admirer of such an approach to talking and thinking and educating everyone on tech. I admire terminology that sticks longer than hype, and I think this is one of the absolute best examples of that. The data warehouse. You fought for that concept through many decades before it was adopted, and now it's simply table stakes. Every single company in the world of a certain size and at a certain level of industrialization has a data warehouse. That is not something that you discuss. Now, you have also put forward a new idea, the textual warehouse. It's not that new, actually. You have been talking about it in many books. And I personally had the pleasure of seeing you presenting at Data Day Texas, where you presented this idea. And so I think, Bill, that you have done something not once, but twice. I think that the textual warehouse is something that companies in the future will have, just as they have data warehouses. And so that's why I'm interested in exploring the textual warehouse, especially because we're seeing the first movements towards such a direction Now, with the big hype or rise of AI that we have in the present in these years. So with that, I want to get closer to the subject that we will be discussing. But before I begin ask you questions, I think I would like to open with a quotation or citation from your book, Bill, and then ask you some very open questions, not about the textual warehouse, but about something else, and you'll see what it is. So I'm holding up the book, Turning Text into Gold. You did a fantastic presentation at Data Day Texas back in January this year on the textual warehouse, and so I will read the beginning of this book, or part of the introduction of this book. Text is the common fabric in society, you write. Business is transacted in text. Arguments are made in text. Court cases are conducted in text. Conversations between friends transpire through text. In short, text is the medium of exchange between people living on Earth. Since the beginning of computing, text has defied the computer. Text is simply the original square peg in the round hole. Computer processes focus on structured transactions, not text. For most of its early history, the computer was not much help in dealing with text. That was a shame, as some of the most important information was in the form of text. But today, and this is very much today in our era, but today there exist advancements in technology that allow the computer to read, store, and analyze text, and in doing so, a whole world of informed decision making is possible. And so, with that quote, I would like to open the conversation with a, a question that really is about text itself. What is it about text that fascinates you, Bill? What is the nature of text?
The my whole story with text begins. Pardon me. My whole story with text begins about 23 or 4 years ago. I was at the time working in the world of data warehousing, which is structured data, and I sat down and asked myself the question, why do corporations only look at really a small percentage of their data, which is structured data? Why is text ignored? And that started my journey towards understanding what the issues of text were. At the time, I had no idea the complexity that faced me and other people. That everybody takes text for granted because we speak language. But what we don't understand is in the background, each of our brains is automatically processing thousands of rules all at the same time, and we don't even think about it. Well, when you start to put text into a computer, you don't have, for the most part, those rules. And that's what makes text so devilishly difficult for the computer. Now, there's lots of reasons why text is complex. I have to say that in today's world, one of the things that really frustrates me is the attitude of many corporations saying, well, we have text, let's just take ChatGPT, and ChatGPT solves our problems with text. And indeed, ChatGPT does solve a certain set of problems with text. No question about that. In fact, ChatGPT has opened up doors that have never been opened up before. But in terms of solving the problems with text, when it comes to business value, ChatGPT really doesn't do that. And so let's talk a little bit about why. There's actually some very basic reasons why ChatGPT and business value are somewhat divorced. The first reason is that ChatGPT is text producing text. And for the purposes of ChatGPT, that's just fine. But for the purposes of doing the analytical processing that we need to do in the corporation, that's not fine. And so, in order to solve many of the problems of business value in the corporation today, we've got to have the information in the form of a database. So what does a database do for you that ChatGPT doesn't do for you? Well, it does a lot of things. And I'm going to kind of rummage through a list here of things that a database will do for you. The first and probably the most important reason why a database is more valuable for business value. By the way, I'm not demeaning ChatGPT. ChatGPT does some wonderful things for people. It answers all kinds of interesting questions, but in terms of solving business value, it's not a terribly good tool. Why? Number one, because of volumes of data. If you ask, for example, a doctor, how many medical records does he or she look at when they have a problematic patient, the doctor will tell you, well, 20, 25. And that's because the doctor's got to manually read the records themselves. However, when you are able to take text and put it into the form of a database, now you have an unlimited number of pieces of information you can look at. You can look at 10 million patients, and certain analysis of medicine absolutely requires that you look at lots and lots of records. So the well, and there's lots of differences. The number one difference is in terms of volume, because text has got to be read manually, and because a database does not have to be read manually, there's a great difference in the volume of data that can be processed. Number one. Number two, the very basis of the data itself. ChatGPT is good for looking at text found in places like the internet. In fact, it's extremely good for that purpose. However, for the data that's found in your organization, tucked away in databases, SQL Server databases, Oracle databases, DB2 databases. When data's tucked in there, ChatGPT either can't or has a very difficult time going in and finding that data. And yet, that data in the corporation is the data that is at the heart of servicing your business value. A third reason why a database is so important for analytical processing is that you can visualize the data coming out of a database. You can create a dashboard. You can create a knowledge graph. You can even just put it into an Excel spreadsheet. But the truth of the matter is that visualization of data is very important for seeing the big picture. I don't know if you've ever tried to take a database or a listing to a manager. What does managers of the world do when they see a big pile of information? What do? They ignore it. Managers look at charts. Managers look at summarizations, and trying to get summarizations and visualizations directly out of ChatGPT is very difficult. Trying to get those visualizations out of a database is very easy to do, because that's what the data is there for. Then there's another topic, and that is the quality of the data itself. That for a variety of reasons, and I'm not an expert in ChatGPT, but ChatGPT produces these things called hallucinations, that in terms of the reliability of the data and consistency of the data, ChatGPT has a reputation of not doing that very well. The thing about a database that's created from text, you have 100% certainty that you know the source of the data, that you can tie every word back to its originating source, so that there's ever any question about the quality of the data, you have that. And my friend Shweta, I believe, is more of an expert on this than I am. Another reason, and I tell you, I'm going to make this the last reason, but I could go on and on. Another reason why ChatGPT is not particularly good for doing analytical processing is that analysts all the time come along and do what's called iterative or heuristic processing. They submit a query and they say, "Oh, that's not quite right. I want to change things a little bit and resubmit the query." They do that. They look at the results and they say, "Oh, that's not quite right." And every time that you've got to go back to your source data, that costs a lot of machine cycles when you use ChatGPT. However, now when you create your database from text, yes, you do have to go back to your source data, but you only have to go back to it once. That when the analyst wants to change his or her mind about what they want to ask, you don't have to go back and derive the data from the raw source. You can simply go back to your database. And I've got a long list here. That's as far as I want to go. Take my word. There are a lot of other reasons why doing analytical processing from ChatGPT for business value. Doing analytical processing for lots of other things. Looking up for what ship did Columbus not sail back to the New World in? What was the last name of the first person on the moon? What was the score in the soccer game between Liverpool and Arsenal last night? ChatGPT does an excellent job of that databases really aren't designed to do at all. But when it comes to looking at business value, and so this is why I get so frustrated to business managers. They think that ChatGPT is a panacea. They think that they simply put ChatGPT over all of their textual data in the corporation, and suddenly wonderful things happen. And guess what? They don't.
Thank you, Bill, for this fantastic rant. I prepared a lot of questions, and I expected knowledge and wisdom, but the level of energy and passion, I have to say, that surprises me. But obviously, I can see that you must be involved in a lot of talks around ChatGPT. That is only natural given the current state of affairs in tech, right? But I want to circle back a little bit to some of the distinctions that you have in your book and some of the details that you unfolded in several of your books. So first of all, just for the audience here, the vision you have on the enterprise, I think, is perhaps a little different than ChatGPT in general, that is trained on text from the open web, right? Enterprise text, at least as I see it, can be somewhat different. You have a concept that you call boilerplate text. What's boilerplate text?
Well, I call it the business language model. When you take a look at the progression of language models, if you're trying to look at everything in the world, you need a large language model. You need to be able to understand anything anybody says. And however, when you go into business, you don't need to understand everything everybody says. You need to focus on the business itself, airlines, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals. That the language that's contained in each of those businesses is different and pretty much unique to that particular business. So when you get ready to build your textual warehouse, you don't focus in on the world. I'll tell you something. A true large language model is, I'm going to say, impossible to build. You never are going to be finished, as in ever. And furthermore, if you were to finish, it would change by the time you finish. You'd have to go back and redo the thing over again. So a true large language model is an impossibility. However, in terms of the business language models, that's not an impossibility. That you can focus on the language of restaurants or whatever industry you want to focus on. So, and by focusing on a given business, you now have a task that's finite. The task of dealing with an LLM is infinite, truly infinite. The task of dealing with a business is a challenging task. Don't get me wrong, but the challenging task is still a finite, doable task. And so,
Yeah.
so
No, but that I completely agree on that, Bill. And that I think it opens a lot of very, very interesting possibilities exactly because of those limitations. So maybe for the audience, uh, could we just briefly sketch or define what is a textual warehouse then? What is it?
a textual warehouse contains several elements. Number one, it contains vocabulary, vocabulary of whatever enterprise it is that you're going to be looking at. The second thing that it contains is context. Text is different, fundamentally different from data. When we have the amount of money a bank has loaned this month, that's a well-known piece of information. We know what the context of that is. But when we see a word that somebody uses, in order for us to understand that word, we have to understand the context. So, number one, your textual warehouse has to contain vocabulary. Second off, it has to contain the context for vocabulary. Now, context is kind of interesting. There's really two kinds of context. There's what you would call source context, and there's what you call immediate context. Source context is the context that would normally be associated with a word, say in a dictionary. Immediate context is the context of the word in the context of the text that precedes the word and the text that follows the word. Because oftentimes the text immediately preceding and following a word does affect the meaning of the word. So when we talk about context, there's really two kinds of context: source context and immediate context. The next thing that the dictionary needs to contain, the warehouse for textual warehouse needs to contain is where the source comes from. That where did, when you were reading your document, you get the information from. That's necessary because if somebody ever has a question about the validity of the interpretation of the word, you can go all the way back to the source itself. Now, there are a lot of other mitigating factors. One mitigating factor of a textual warehouse is the language itself. There's as enamored I am of the English language because it's my native language, I'm the first person to recognize it's not the only language in the world. There's German, there's French, there's Japanese, there's Chinese, there's Spanish. If I'm not mistaken, there are to be about 220 recognized languages on Earth. That's another mitigating factor. And then another factor of the vocabulary is you've got to be aware in the vocabulary of the different spellings of word and how your interpreting agent is going to treat the word. So those are all factors of the what would go into a textual warehouse.
Yeah, thank you very much for this answer. I certainly sense if you follow this universe closely and you have looked into the nature of large language models, I certainly sense quite a different approach in the thinking of a textual warehouse than a large language model would be, which would be the architecture behind ChatGPT, right? But I think we have to skip that exact discussion in the essence of time, because we need to move on to at least one particular question that I would love to answer for you to answer, Bill, because we can discuss this as a theoretical architecture or something that would be nice to have, but that is not really the case for the textual warehouse. Without mentioning names, could you mention some of the examples of your clients that you have already implemented textual warehouses for? What kind of companies those companies are, and what the textual warehouse does in those companies?
Sure, and I'll make this a brief explanation in the interest of time. But a while back, we were talking to an oil and gas company. This oil and gas company had many oil wells in many places. Each oil well had its own set of documents, documents about pumps, about pipes, about drilling bits, and a whole bunch of information that each oil well had. And these were in the form of documents. What happened is every now and then a vendor of the oil company would come along and say, there's been a recall of a certain kind of pump. And the oil company had a problem. They said, now we've got to go look out through the thousands of documents that we have. And how do we have to look through the documents? We have to look at them manually. And it was a tremendous effort and a very important effort to manually go through these documents. So the intent of the project was to be able to take the contents of the document, put them into a database, and now when a vendor comes along and says we have some changes, you can now, in an electronic fashion, look and find your documents you don't have. It's much like the card catalog in a library. When you go into a library, you don't go, I don't know, maybe you do, but most people don't go into the library and look at stacks and stacks of books. Instead, they go to the card catalog, they find what they're looking for in the card catalog, and then take that in the card catalog and then go find the books they're looking for. That's again, you don't have to do it that way. It's just that that's the way you do it. And so the application of being able to create a document card catalog for the world is one. By the way, there's a lot of other applications. This is only one that I have in mind.
Wonderful. For someone like me that has a background in library information science, I say this a lot, but it's a really interesting time to be alive for someone like me that grew up with text and metadata and library systems that got more and more digitized and like really deeply connected to the World Wide Web movement, the invention of RDF, like search engine functionality, everything. We see this again now for the enterprise because of AI, and what you're thinking in the context of text, Bill, is really impressive, and it makes me smile and dream. I have to say, and but moreover, we need to transition, and so Shweta, I hope you feel ready. I wanted to ask you, I've been interviewing you on my podcast that I host together with the Chief Technical Officer of Actian, Emma McGrath. And we talked about your concept, content quality management, which is a concept that I stumbled upon. I see Malcolm on the call. He was also quite early in discovering your concept. I follow Malcolm's ideas a lot also. But Shweta, this concept that you have been putting forward in Medium posts and on LinkedIn, how does content quality management connect to the idea of textual warehouse? Can you educate us on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to actually talk about it. And I'm a big fan of Bill, by the way. So I often lose my words when I see him on the screen. So Bill has actually explained very beautifully as to how textual warehouse work, right? And I think it is a breakthrough that finally makes that enterprise text accessible, right? It's like a foundation layer to me. It's pulling it together, standardizing it, and making it actually queryable at scale, right? And I feel that without that, enterprise are almost blind to the most of their own knowledge. Like Bill said, that most of the data is almost unstructured, so they are actually blind to that knowledge. Okay, but then here's the real question, right? To me, in terms of like, once I have all of this text at one place, okay, as a textual warehouse, how do I decide what to trust, right? Because not all text is created equally. Some is very clear and some is very reliable. Sometimes others are contradictory or incomplete as well, right? I feel that treating them the same, it actually confuses both the users in terms of like both users like analysts or even your LLMs as well, right? So the first thing I would like to confirm on this call is content quality management or CQM, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't replace the textual warehouse. I I strongly feel it sits on top of it, right? The warehouse is a stage, right? It ensures that all of the unstructured text is available. It is consistent and it is queryable, just like Bill actually was talking about. Okay. But once the curtain rises, the real question is which part of that text can you trust? Can you reuse or even hand it over to the LLMs? Right? And that's where the content quality management comes in picture. It works with textual warehouse. Okay, it's that qualification layer on top of the textual warehouse. It may where when the textual warehouse is making sure that you have the text, content quality management is making sure that you can now act on it with confidence, right? And this is what is also tying to the business outcome part of what Bill was alluding to just a minute ago. Okay, now there's a lot of technical stuff that is required to actually make this happen. Okay, I won't talk about it here. We could have another session about it for sure, and I'm working on the technicalities of this, right? But I would love to share as to why do you actually need this layer on top of the textual warehouse, right? So to answer that question to myself, I asked myself, and I picked up two things that I felt are very related to this topic, and I think Bill covered it so beautifully as well. Okay, so two things. One is if you haven't read, you should actually read the OpenAI's terms of use. Okay, it explicitly actually says that you are responsible for the content, including ensuring that it does not violate any of the applicable law or these terms, right? In other words, the burden of input quality sits with the enterprise, not with the model. It sits with you who is actually creating this data, whether it is in the textual warehouse format or it is in the knowledge graph format or whatever you are creating. It's actually up to you to make sure that that input quality is maintained. Okay. And the number two I want to actually talk about is there's a very recent study that came out from KAIST, KAIST. Okay, it looked at why people get frustrated with ChatGPT, and Bill was actually so right about this, right? So the top causes, as per that paper and that study, was the model is missing the intent. It's in and it is and the inaccurate responses as well. And the striking part was the 72% of the cases user couldn't fix it by reprompting it well. They couldn't fix that. It's not a failure of the model itself. It's a reflection that it has it what it was fed to, right? So the input was actually was the problem and the cause for it, right? So if the content isn't qualified upfront, the AI cannot magically repair it. And that's what Bill was actually also trying to tell you, that it is good at some stuff, but not at everything, right? And this is where the content quality management actually comes in. Okay. So if the textual warehouse puts you inside the matrix, streams of text flowing everywhere, then I would call the CQM your Neo, right? it sees the signal in the noise and it chooses what's real and it delivers that usable, trustworthy input. Okay. So in my opinion, the connection is very clear. Once you have your text in the textual warehouse, the governance layer, the content quality management layer is going to make it available all from the governance perspective as to what text needs to be trusted, reliable, and what text is more confident to make your LLM responsible, less hallucinating, right? So that's the connection between the textual warehouse as to what you have as a text and what you can have as a trusted text as well. Yeah. So
Thank you,
that's
Shweta.
that's
That's
what content quality is connected to the textual warehouse, from my opinion.
very clearly laid out. I have more questions for you, but in the essence of time, because we both need to hear out. I was about to call you my colleague, Jessica, but we have exchanged views so many times that. And then also we have some brilliant questions in the Q&A box, so I would love to get to some of those too. But that is not to make you feel that you should rush through your concept, Jessica. I was in the room when the ontology pipeline as an idea was born, and I think it connects very, very nicely with the idea of the textual warehouse as well. And I think, like, overall content quality management, the ontology pipeline and the textual warehouse are ideas that makes us get more firm understanding on how we can proceed towards managing unstructured data for AI, right? So Jessica, please elaborate and help us understand what is the ontology pipeline, how does it connect to these ideas and the idea of the textual warehouse in particular.
So thanks, Ola. The ontology pipeline really was a riff, or is a riff, on the semantic spectrum from the semantic web. But it codifies processes as well in library science for structuring vocabularies and context and meaning. So, very much like Bill alluded to the card catalog, which I obviously have an affinity for, also being a librarian or librarian information science person, starts with a controlled vocabulary. So the idea is how to structure that controlled vocabulary, and the textual warehouse does that beautifully. From controlled vocabulary, we structure, and there's certain parts of the pipeline that are somewhat interchangeable, but the idea is iterative steps and stages of maturity for contextual vocabularies. And so from the controlled vocabulary, we look at building a taxonomy, which is a hierarchy. From the hierarchy, we go to thesaurus. Thesaurus extends the taxonomy to have relationships. There's definitions and meaning. And then from there, we go to metadata schemas. Obviously, metadata schemas can flip to a different part of the pipeline. That's the one piece of flexibility. And then ontologies, which adds context and meaning. So it's the encoding structure. And then obviously knowledge graphs. So it's an iterative process in helping to guide people, and it's measurable. And that's also very important. But it relates to the textual warehouse in that the textual warehouse can surface and help to co-locate vocabulary, context, and meaning. The ontology pipeline can help to identify and help to guide teams in being able to determine definitions, for example, reconciling acronyms with terminology, encoding it in a way that we're able to connect a concept with not only a definition, but a link to an authority source that validates that concept's meaning and helps to codify that existence of that concept and its relationship to other things within, for example, the textual warehouse.
Wonderfully laid out. Very, very succinct. Thank you, Jessica. If there's I get it. I get also that this was very briefly explained, so people may have questions, but in the essence of time, is it okay that we jump to the Q&A now? Because I see a lot of questions that I think we should answer. I just saw, though, I want to mention today, Jessica, that your post on the ontology pipeline on LinkedIn had more than 800 likes. Like, I was incredibly impressed by that, and it's a very clear concept, and I love it. So it's very well deserved. Well deserved. I know we can expect more on the ontology pipeline from you. So I
And it's
suggest
interesting.
everyone follow.
I do want to add what's nice is I have talked to people that have implemented the ontology pipeline, and it's not that you have to implement the entire pipeline. Some people working up to just taxonomies is enough, but you at least have a vision of an end game should you choose to take that opportunity.
Yeah, and that is like, no, I love it, but we will talk more about it. Okay, the Q&A. I will proceed with the questions in a chronological order. I need to, or at least if nothing else suggests otherwise. But Kanan has a question, and I guess it's for you, Bill. Are you proposing that we have an enterprise data warehouse and a textual data warehouse, or textual warehouse? I guess it should read. Combined. So are you thinking of combining data warehouses and textual warehouses?
Yes, you absolutely. Okay, I hate this answer. The answer is yes and no. That yes, you can combine them, and it makes a lot of sense to. But do you have to combine them? No, you don't. And so again, I hate a wishy-washy answer, but the answer is yes and no. Whatever makes the most business sense for your organization.
I think to not sound wishy-washy, Bill, maybe you could just say that these are decoupled concepts.
Yes.
that makes you less sound. That makes it sound more intentional, which I think it is, honestly, to defend you. How do you compare text stores to NoSQL technologies and content stores? A question from Paul. I guess it's also to you, Bill. How do you
I'm not familiar with
technologies and content stores? Come again? Can we hear? Did we lose you, Bill? Can you hear me?
No, I hate to. I'm not going to answer the question because I don't know enough about the subject to render an opinion. So I'm going to have to pass on this one.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I love the honesty. Okay, a question about layered architecture.
If I may,
sure, Shweta.
Maybe try to answer. It's a key value pair when most of the NoSQL technologies come in, right? It's mostly from that perspective. So what Bill is alluding to is a proper warehouse that has more than key value pair, right? So that could be probable answer here.
Shweta, thank you. The next one actually ties a little bit into what you added to the textual warehouse thinking, Shweta. Again, Kanan asking, will the textual warehouse have a similar architecture with lake, warehouse, curated layers, and so forth? So we're looking, so obviously, I guess, Shweta, your point would be yes, it's a layered architecture. Do you agree, Paul, on that?
Yes, I do agree. Yeah, whatever you come up with, this would be sitting on top of it. It's just like your data quality piece, right? When do you have the data quality? Once you have your data ready, you actually have your data quality pipeline running on it, right? So that's the same thing for the content quality management. Once in any format you have your data ready, okay, you should be able to run the content quality management like a module or a feature to give you only the text that is required to answer that particular question. Right? Not all the text.
Yeah. Bill, you felt like chipping in, or should I just have the next question?
Let's go to the next question.
Okay. It's from Ramona. one of my very, very dear readers and a friend that I have never talked to, but really a great, great person that I suggest you connect with on LinkedIn and Substack. So Amona asks this question, and it's to you, Bill. I will find one for you, Jessica, also. So this one is for you, Bill. I see alignment between Bill's textual warehouse and small language models. I was thinking the same thing, actually, when you went over the explanation. So on a very specific business domain. So one question I have in both contexts is, how is the tribal knowledge captured? Maybe, Bill, you can answer in the context of the textual warehouse. How is
Okay.
tribal knowledge captured?
This is actually a very complex question. So I'm going to try to give you a short, succinct answer, but I'm going to tell you it's not the complete answer. The truth of the matter is, when you're building your taxonomies, your business language model, you end up focusing on normally used words that, let's take banking, word that somebody from Bank of America, Citicorp, J.P. Morgan, and Wells Fargo, they would all understand the word. And that's what goes into your business language model. However, every corporation, in fact, every person in this world has their small amount of own private vocabulary, things that you say that nobody else would say. So when you build your business language model, you've got to build it so that it's able to easily be modified and added to, because nobody can build a business language model and include all of the customization itself. So we recognize that there has to be customization, and the best answer is when you go down to a particular organization, you find the customized vocabulary and quickly insert it into your business language model. Now, I've given you a very high-level answer. If you're interested in seeing actually how this works, I'd be happy to demonstrate it for you, but this is actually a complex question.
Yes, it's indeed a complex question. But it's fantastic, if I may say on a side note, that the global data and AI community is so well connected that we can have such a webinar of people participating from all over the world, from Japan to Europe to the US. So that's great, at least, even though we don't have time for complicated questions. Paul, and maybe this one is for you, Jessica. I'll ask you about this one. Paul asks, also, how is master data management applied for business context, if more focused on business language models versus leveraging generic LLM ideas? Obviously, it's a question for you, Bill, but I'll try to let Jessica answer this one.
Well, it's interesting. I'm writing a series of articles right now about metadata, and specifically looking at master data management and systems that we build that try to achieve some amount of, I guess, control or source of truth. And so, which I personally, and this may be controversial, I do see MDM as somewhat limited because of the concept of a golden record and the idea that there's one language or one way of describing something to rule them all. So in fact, right now I think that many of us are trying to figure out, okay, we have these two concepts in front of us. We have semantic layer. I feel like I just said a bad word, and master data management, and those can sometimes be very different and disparate processes. So the idea is to create a super flexible, and that's what ontologies do for us, is create a flexible model for describing these things that accommodates more than that one perfect way of saying something or capturing something. Because the reality in business is, as you cover, Ole, in your book, Fundamentals of Metadata Management, is that it's that social aspect of managing data and metadata and structuring data is very difficult to really do successfully, if not impossible. And so the idea is to be able to accommodate and structure things using ontologies so that we're able to take a concept and capture all the nuances from within a business for how that thing is described, how that concept is described, and do it well for both humans and machines. So you have the text literal view, and then you have the backend view that's able to make a very machine readable, interoperable structure of that concept.
Very clear. Thank you. Thank you. We have time for just a couple of more questions. Adash asks, how is data stored or schema designed in a textual data warehouse? Like in a star schema, data is stored in form of dimensions of facts or maybe data marks for reporting purpose. Also, how is data accessed by the end users? Can I know more about architecture of a textual warehouse?
Okay.
For you, Bill. Yeah.
Okay, one more time. This is a very complex question. I'm going to try to give you the quickest, best answer that I can get. That when we went to design something called textual ETL, we knew that first off, we had to have a single physical format for data. Number one. You know, I hate to say this. I would love to answer the question properly. I just don't have time to go into the nuances. So I'm frustrated because I do have a good answer for you. I'd love to tell you data, the structure of data is fundamentally different in a textual warehouse than it is in a data warehouse. In a data warehouse, the metadata describes the data in the column. In a textual warehouse, the metadata describes the data in a row. And again, I know that this is not a good explanation, but that's the best I can do under the circumstances.
I think I will take your hostage, Bill, and say that we have an excellent blog at actian.com where you can elaborate your point for us if you wouldn't mind.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Bill. I won't forget that, Bill. So okay. I will reach out about that. Jono, my good friend Jono, has a question. Oh, I guess we're running out of time, but let's see. What would the typical dimensions of a textual warehouse look like? Trying to connect ones we might find the classical data in. Well, it's a little bit the same question, I guess, isn't it, Bill?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So there will be a blog post about this. I just hijacked Bill Inmon to write a blog post on Actian.
Okay, I'll be happy to.
Thank you, Bill. I know you're busy, so please, if it's possible, it would be really nice. Thank you. But Ramona, the last question. Yes, Adash, we will have that blog post. I will tag you. Don't worry.
Okay.
And Ramona has the last question. As an aside, what Bill defined as immediate context is how a masked language model is trained. I guess that's a comment more than a question.
Yeah.
And by that, we conclude this Data Explored. This is a webinar series where we explored hot trends and topics in the data and AI community globally with authors, thought leaders, and people that are strategists, architects, leaders in big companies. Today, we discussed the reclaiming of unstructured data, as we call it, the textual warehouse, what it can do for text in the era of AI. We did this on the basis of turning text into gold, and actually also the textual warehouse that I have also read and that I really like. Bill, we interviewed you, Bill Inmon. Thank you very much for coming, Bill. And also Jessica and Shweta, thank you for being on our panel as experts that could contextualize this topic even more. So thank you, Bill, Jessica, and Shweta, all of you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Take care.